Hey, howdy, kids. Welcome to Conscious Embodiment, Astrology, and Dreams with your host, Dr. Michael Lennox. I'm here, of course, with Zoe, producer Zoe. We are going to talk about the astrology for January 16th through the 22nd. But first, a couple of questions. I am loving that people are writing in questions about astrology.
Me too.
So keep them coming, but let me say one little thing about this, kids. If your question involves me looking at your chart or considering your natal placements, I'm not going to answer it. I'm answering questions that are general enough that they would speak to all people who might have thoughts about astrology. So please try to keep that in mind when you're sending in questions. But we had a couple that I wanted to answer. Haley wants to know what house system I use. And the answer to that is Placidus. Placidus is the standard house system in Western astrology. In Placidus house system, you have to know the time of birth to have an accurate setup. But the Placidus house system looks at two initiating placements in the cosmos, the eastern horizon and the sort of what is in the natal chart, the midheaven. So you take your first breath from a certain place on the planet at a certain time, and it marks out that something is at the eastern horizon and something else is at the immediately above, the noon point. And the eastern horizon is the ascendant, and it creates its opposite, the descendant. What's at the top of the chart at that first breath becomes the midheaven, which represents the outside expression of the person, and the bottom, its opposite, the imum coli, Latin for, bottom of the chart. Right, so those four angles are scientific, bona fide placements of directionality at your first breath. Then there's a calculation that takes the geometry of having now divided the circle into 4 pie pieces that subdivides each of those sections 2 more times to where we then have these 12 houses. So that means that if the first house is the ascendant and the 4th house is the bottom of the chart, then the 2nd and 3rd house is generated mathematically with an algorithm based on where the eastern horizon was and where the bottom of the chart was. So you get these 12 houses that are mathematically exact that represent the actual placement of where the Earth was oriented in the 24-hour spin of the day. Most low-level astrology teachers who are teaching astrology out there are using something called whole house, where the whole system is just sort of dumbed down and all of those calculations are removed. And so if you are, as I am, a Sagittarius rising, then your first house becomes your Sagittarius house. Then your 2nd house would be your Capricorn house. Your 3rd house would be your Aquarius house. This is not accurate. It is not mathematical. It is overly generalized, and it completely bastardizes the placement of planets and the houses they actually appear in. So I object to people who teach whole house. Now, I would rather have someone out there knowing all about the signs and the planets and the angles in their movement and have an incorrect sense of what a chart looks like and how it works than to have them try to learn Placidus system and say, holy shit, this is too complicated. I didn't do that well in math in high school, so I'm out of here. Right? So, Placidus house system. So it's a very complex week this week. It's the last week of the lunar cycle. We're still in some challenge with Mars, even though he turned around and went direct last week. Mercury's not moving at all right now, as today, and he turns around on Wednesday. The Sun and Pluto are coming together, which is a sort of a visit to the shadow. And then we finish the week out with a new moon. So it is a jam-packed kind of week. And it has some generalized complexity because of the stationing planets. So Mars is not retrograde anymore. He went direct last Thursday. So we're definitely feeling some flow and movement over the last couple of days because the planet of action is finally facing front. But he ain't moving. He's been at 8 degrees of Gemini since we got into this month, January. He will be at this degree point until the very end of the month. He doesn't hit like 9 degrees till like January 25th. So that this week, though he's direct and we will feel that, we are feeling that already. Meaning, when I say we're feeling that, what does that mean? Well, that means that we might be less prone to angry reactions. We might be able to make decisions in a little bit more, efficiency. I feel ready to get back into exercise in a way that Mars is retrograde sort of inhibited. But Mars not appearing to move is, I was going to say, is just as problematic as in backwards, but that's bullshit. It's not nearly as problematic as
No
him.
way.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's a wish. But I in terms of a week's sort of generalized energy, the fact that Mars is at 8 degrees at the start of the week and will be at 8 degrees at the end of the week means that as we move through the week, we may want to move fast and furiously, but if the planet of action has no movement, we're going to feel that too in terms of decision-making, our responses to things, and how goals and projects are going to be attended to. We might be ready to move faster than the energy will actually allow us this week. And so if you feel that in any way, if you feel any kind of drag on your motivation or a sense of like flow and movement, it might just be that Mars ain't moving.
So would you say just be gentle with all these resolutions and kicking off the year?
I would say a couple of things, and let's start with that. Yes, be gentle with yourself if the things you imagined you were ready to tackle don't feel quite ready, or things are more daunting than you wished or planned. So yes, gentle as you go. We talk a lot about Mars in retrograde as having to do with decision making, and that's true and accurate. But decision making is also a function of Mars and Mercury, right? We think with our minds, therefore we decide and choose with our minds. But Mars is the planet of decision making because he's the planet of action. But it's the two of them in debilitation means we are doubly debilitated. So if movement and behaviors are challenged because Mars isn't moving, and we're literally in a week where right smack dab in the middle of the week, Mercury turns around, then we've got a cranky week. I find Mercury's retrogrades stationing into being direct very cranky in my body. I'm always in a bad mood that day in a kind of an inexplicable fashion to the point where I now sort of expect it. That the day that, so that's like Wednesday, but the days before he turns around, he's also not moving. And the days after he turns around, he's also not moving. So Mars is not moving and Mercury is not moving all week. And he turns around on Wednesday. So yes, once we get into Wednesday after like early morning, because I think it happens early in the day on Wednesday, huzzah, both Mercury and Mars are direct. And we're going to feel that as movement and clearer thinking and clearer negotiating. But the non-movement of mind and body from Mars and Mercury not moving at the end of the week, we will feel as well as challenges, energy that might want to move faster than we can actually accommodate, or just what happens when, our bodies want to act in a way that's not energetically supported. The whole week, be kind and gentle with yourself and others. There's a way that Mercury and Mars are interacting this week that is part of Mercury's retrograde cycle that could also make the week, I don't know how to say this, challenging, yeah. It's about identifying the new choices that might be beginning to rise up because of all of this work in the unconscious that Mars has been doing since like September, and Mercury as we moved from December into January. Back on December 15th. So yes, this is a very good transit to examine. Go back, everybody, to the middle of December, the 15th, give or take a day on either side. That was the first time Mercury and Mars passed through the Great Eliminator angle, a 150-degree angle that is the fork in the road, the exit strategy off the freeway is what's described when two planets hold a 150-degree angle. So we think of it as a fork in the road. That's the language I often use for this particular transit. No matter who the planets are, two planets holding a 150-degree angle is a freeway exit or a fork in the road. Then we look to the planets themselves to get a distinction about, well, what kind of a fork in the road? Well, in this case, it is literally a fork in the road about making decisions as to where you want your projects and goals and actions to move in, like what direction. Because Mercury is the navigator, Mars is the doer, and if they're holding an eliminator angle, the mid-December period, with a peak on the 15th, and you look at the 14th and the 16th as well, might have brought up an idea about a shift or a change or a fork in the road that might be coming up again now. So you want to look back at that mid-December thing before you make any assessments of how this week is going to play out. What's powerful about the second and third hit of this transit that first arose in mid-December is the first one's today, and the third one, the first meaning the second one, is today, and the third one of these three is Friday. So that means the entire week has important but potentially confusing processes about seeing what new directions you want to move in, and you might get some clues back in the middle of December. I know for myself in my business, there were things I was working on in December about announcing projects for 2023 that got waylaid by some challenges in my team. So there were things I was expecting to launch at the end of December that week, that middle week in December, got screwed up because of life, right? Life circumstances and things happen and relationships change. And that occurred for me in that middle week of December, which puts the effort that would have happened back then into this week. We will be working on this announced this week, right? So it's very obvious in my chart. And it is a fork in the road about how I approach some of my classes. So you guys look for your forks in the road or new decisions. If you can find something in December, then you definitely want to look to how that might connect to this week. And if you don't overthink it. Just let December go and understand that both at the beginning of this week and as we close it out, we are in a position to need to look for the new idea, and it might be hard to find, but important at least to look. So I am not looking forward to Wednesday because it's also the day that Sun and Pluto are coming together by conjunction, which happens once a year. I'm kidding about not looking forward to it. I'm trying to be funny. But it is a dicey day to have Mercury stationing direct, turning around on Wednesday, being the same day that the Sun, representing our conscious awareness, is going to conjunct Pluto, who owns the basement, the shadow, the places and spaces below where really and truly all our power lies. But Pluto is the planet of power and authority. And why is that? Because our power comes from spaces below. In fact, when power comes from conscious spaces, we're in trouble. That's brutality. Power that emanates from a deeper place, that's real power. And since shadow work is sort of the hallmark of everything that I do as an astrologer, our relationship between the sun and Pluto is key when it comes to examining the shadow. What I like to say about when the sun and Pluto come together by conjunction, it would be as if the sun is right above us, which would cast the least shadow, right? Can you picture that? Like if the sun is coming from the side, the shadow is very, very long. But when the sun
like
is
the middle of the
right
day.
above, there is no visible shadow to a greater or lesser extent. So the symbolic meaning of Wednesday this week and a day or so before and a day or so after. So the light of consciousness all week is going to be shining into deeper places that we don't normally have access to. So the value of this is that if we're a little angry, we might know what some of the below the surface motivations are for that. If we're in deep grief over something, we might have access to some of the wounds from the past that are causing the current grief to feel more intense. I'm just making stuff up now to sort of reflect a week that's driven by an ability to be in touch with stuff that's typically not accessible to us because it's hidden in the unconscious. Therefore, we get to do some decent self-investigation as we go this week. And the struggles that I've been trying to describe might be there with just simple decision-making and choices about like where to focus and what to move to next. The benefit of Sun and Pluto together is you're going to see things about your motivations that might otherwise be hidden. And that allows us to be more authentic in our decision-making and our choices as we go. And it's going to make the middle of the week a little cranky. So just be, again, gentle with yourself, especially Wednesday. So on Friday, the sun is going to move into Aquarius. We leave the Capricorn mansion behind, and we enter this fun territory of breaking out of restrictions. I love that Aquarius comes after the sort of dive into the fall and death with winter in the north. Forgive me, Southern Hemisphere listeners. The archetypes are the same for the north and the south. Only in the north, we originated these archetypes up here based on our relationship with the sun. Right? So once we move into Scorpio season, we're leaning towards death, the darkest. Capricorn brings us to the darkety dark. And then the moment that happens, we start moving towards more light. The second that, winter solstice is over after 3 days, we start resurrecting. And so the first mansion that comes after we have visited the darkest of the dark is an energy that says we can break out of the dark into something completely new. It's like if we're dying to ourselves as winter comes and going fallow so that we can start again when spring is going to arrive down the lane a little bit, Aquarius is like us waking up from the deep sleep and having a sense of what new thing can I try? What out of the box experience is drawing me? So it's a marvelous moment to consider things that are unique to you, that light you up from the inside, and that aren't limited by constraints or the past or the way things have always been done. It's a great innovative time. And so the sun moves into this Uranus-ruled territories. That means like we're in the land of pivots, changing directions, brand new ideas, captivating us and grabbing us. And the very next day, we have the new moon in Aquarius, 1 degree. On the 21st of January, it's exact at 12:55 p.m. Pacific time. And this is where we set intentions that line up with the breaking out of the box, the innovative ways we want to express ourselves anew. This is like definitely a new moon to go outrageously, into any sort of crazy idea that you might have in there, because this is the archetype of crazy ideas. This new moon trines Mars, who's just turned around. This is fortuitous for us for the lunar cycle ahead, because the new moon says we're shooting out, starting up, moving again. And a trine from the new moon to Mars says our intentions sort of get ushered right into Mars's consciousness of action and movement, and he is ready to act and move. I mean, granted, he ain't really moving till the end of the month. So we might not see a lot of movement in the first half of this lunar cycle.
But we feel it.
Well, we feel it, and we know it. Like, I'm telling you that even though Mars ain't moving, he's not looking the other way, right? Mm-hmm. If this new moon happened when Mars was looking the other way because he was retrograde, it'd be like, oh, fuck, I hope that intention landed. But with the trine from the new moon to Mars and him direct means that he carries our intentions with him. We spoke a lot last year about Jupiter and how he inched into Aries, but then pulled back into Pisces. And I talked a lot about how Pisces is the imagination and the inner mental and emotional equivalent of things that we want to create. It's the field of potential. And it's in Aries where that idea that we might have in Pisces gets pushed into action. And because he has moved into this sign, we now have this energy of movement to enjoy all winter and spring. And this new moon is in a sextile with Jupiter. Means they're working well together. They're roughly 60 degrees apart. So intentions that we set, not only being ushered into Mars's capable hands to turn them into action, but the new moon is also touching Jupiter's capacity to fuel and service our manifestation desires with the capacity to bring us all that we, want. And while the Aquarius archetype is known for a kind of over-the-topness that can come from Uranus's sort of electrical, lightning flash, we've got Saturn and Venus, who are both also in Aquarius, sort of tempering the overly excitable energy, right? Uranus brings an excitable energy, a sextile to Jupiter's going to increase that excitable energy. That's air for the moon and sun, and fire where Jupiter is. So that's an explosion of energy. The fact that the sobering, responsibility-driven consciousness of Saturn is connecting with Venus, which is how we feel the heart's desires that we hold, and that they're together in Aquarius is sort of the damper pedal that I think we need in this full moon. Otherwise, we'll just be too excited with fire and move too fast, get too impulsive. But I like the fact that Saturn and Venus are saying, all right, keep it right-sized. Go big, think out of the box, be innovative, but don't be ridiculous. Just keep things right-sized. It's a beautiful new moon also in this way. It's the first new moon of the new year. And the last couple of lunar cycles were kind of deep and challenging in a healing sort of way. And this is the first new moon where we've got a lunar cycle ahead of us that doesn't have Mercury retrograde, that doesn't have Mars retrograde, that doesn't have Chiron demanding healing left, right, and center. And certainly the rest of January is likely to be a little bit less intense than the last 2 weeks, the first 2 weeks in January, and certainly the last 2 months of last year. Set powerful intentions on Saturday for new and unusual ways of expressing, and then just trust that we will make it through the rest of this lunar cycle intact. And as we have said so many times this week, be gentle with yourselves, guys, but have at it.
All right, it's dream segment time. Every week, Dr. Michael will interpret dreams that are sent in via email or take a live caller. If you would like your dream interpreted on the podcast, you can go ahead and email us at dreams@michaellennox.com. Hopefully your dream will make it onto the show. Today we have a dreamer calling in from Florida. Elizabeth, welcome. What you dreaming?
Hello, thank you for having me. So this is, I guess, one of my biggest dreams that have been weighing on me. So in this dream, I was planning a vow renewal ceremony with my real life partner. Well, we've been married in real life for many years. Not that we're actually planning a renewal service ceremony or anything like that, but my husband had some friends coming in for our vow renewal, and I had never met them before. Now, this is only in the dream.
Thank you.
Not in real life.
Not in real life.
But I was super excited to be able to finally meet them. Now, it was also my birthday.
In the dream or
Correct. In the dream.
Okay.
So nobody remembered that it was my birthday. Not my husband, not my family, not my friends. No one remembered. And I felt bad bringing it up and saying, hey, you guys forgot my birthday. So I didn't say anything to anybody. I didn't want to distract from the vow ceremony. I also didn't want to make it a big deal about it being my birthday and that they didn't remember. I was kind of getting a little anxious about that because then they would feel bad and then I would feel bad that they felt bad. So as we're getting ready for the renewal of vows, I went into a salon, which once I walked in, it actually looked like a house. All the walls were painted in a muted blue color. The carpeting was blue, like everything was a shade of blue. When I walked in, I looked down at my fingernails and they were painted pink. Now, I also had a fake thumb that I thought to myself, oh, I need to remove this. So I take this fake thumb off my thumb and the nail was painted pink also. I went up to the technician who was sitting in front of a pedicure station and I asked her how much it would be for a mani-pedi. She turned to me and said $3,003. I started getting anxious because I was like, is that $3,000? Is that $300? Like, this is expensive. I'm paying a lot for this day. So I asked her again, what was the price? She only said $3,003. At that point, I was getting way too anxious. So I just said, you know what? I have to think about this. I'll be back. And I left. When I left, I ran into one of my husband's friends that I had not met. And we were chatting. My husband walked up and was like, hey, what's going on? And then that's when the dream landscape changed. And I was in the family room of my childhood home. And it was just me. They weren't with me anymore. My husband and his friend were no longer with me. I was by myself. I have from a family of 7. So we always had toys, books, just stuff laying around. But the room was pristine, professionally decorated. It didn't look like that room in real life at all, what it looked like growing up. So I walked through the room into another door. When I opened the door that should have been my childhood bedroom, it was actually a hotel room. There were 2 queen-size beds. One of my sisters was sleeping on one bed, and her daughter, my niece, was sleeping in the other bed. I climbed into the bed that my sister was sleeping in. That's when my niece woke up and she whispered, happy birthday. I thanked her, asked her not to say anything to anybody because I didn't want to make a big deal about it, but I really appreciated her remembering and saying happy birthday to me. I was actually really overwhelmed with a lot of emotions, conflicting emotions. I was embarrassed. I was excited she remembered. I was sad that no one else did. It was just a cluster of emotions. So then the scene changed. I was back into that nail salon. It was the same nail technician. She was in the same pedicure station. I told her I really wanted to get my nails and my toes done for my wedding and asked what the cost was. I must have asked her 5 different ways how much it cost. And she just kept saying 3003. And then I woke up.
Got it. Let me ask you a couple of questions, Elizabeth, just
Okay.
general life questions. Would you
Sure.
say that in your childhood family, your family of origin, when you were a kid, that you felt like you were nurtured well to have a strong and powerful voice, that your opinion mattered, that you're present? Like, on a scale from 1 to 10, where 10,
No.
yeah. How did I know that, honey? So let me ask you another question, notwithstanding that you have a husband and you are married and maybe, who knows, I don't know if your husband listens to my podcast, but like, how, to the extent that you're able to sort of share in this very public manner, like, how would you say your marriage and your husband reflect your desires to be seen, gotten, heard, and recognized as sovereign and whole? Like, how does that go in your marriage?
He tries.
Okay.
I'm very open in my communication,
Great.
so he is aware
Great.
of how I grew up, how I didn't like it, and how I have been taking steps to try to change that. And he's along for the journey with me. So
Yeah.
we have our
Got
hiccups.
it. No, and he's along for the
but
journey.
he's
He got it. He's along
supportive.
for the
Yes,
journey, and
yes,
that is certainly
yes.
reflected by that. The dream's theme is you're re-upping. you're saying, yes, I'll have a little more of this. I'll renew the contract.
Okay,
right?
that's
Because it's
good.
about renewal, right? Now, look, I always deal with the dream as a reflection of self and not the reflection of the outer world. I call this the inner circle of interpretation and the outer circle of interpretation. So the inner circle, where everything that happens in the dream is a reflection of you. The outer circle, where we'd be like, oh, well, let's talk about your relationship and your husband and the dynamic there, right? So it's not specifically about renewing the marriage, but I ask those questions about what you come from, because the dream takes us back to that, literally. It takes you right back to the place of family unit, sibling group.
Yes.
Meets in this, and in the sibling group, like, our parents form everything about who we are because they are God to us. But it's in the sibling group that we learn how we're going to operate in the world as adults. It's like a little mini sort of social microcosm if there are siblings, right? So the dream is starting with a kind of sense of this, whatever this is in my equation of this. It's like your work, like you just described. I've been working at this stuff, right? So the dream starts with a sense of this is going well enough to re-up. I want to continue. And so it is a little bit about the dynamic between you and your husband, because there are elements in this sort of interaction of aspects of him you've never connected with. And you are excited to connect with this unknown aspect of your husband.
Oh.
Now, I'm going to put it back on you and say that in relational dynamic, the extent of your husband's ability to show up fully, vulnerably, openly is going to be a direct reflection of your ability to show up fully, directly, openly, and categorize, this is what I want, this is what I need, this is how, all that negotiation that happens in a relationship. The limits of our availability for vulnerability and connection and all of that impact our relationship. So you getting excited to meet aspects of your husband in this dream, to me, also says that you have aspects of yourself that you're ready to operate with through, right? It has to be because of the reflection consciousness in dreams. It's not a dream about your husband. So it's not about his imaginary friends you've never met. It's then symbolically of, I am re-upping my commitment that this is the primary relationship through which I do this work. And I'm ready to show up with more of me. Therefore, you're ready to show up with more of you. But the core wound is, I don't matter. Your birthday not being remembered is a symbolic representation of, at the end of the day, who I am is not seen, gotten, or recognized, or honored. So the dream starts out by saying, here's where it's going well. Here's where I'm willing to stay in this flow of self-exploration that includes other human beings, notably my husband. But I still have this, I don't feel recognized, honored, and seen, and I can't even say so. I'm afraid to bring it up. I don't want to say, fuck you guys, you missed my birthday.
Wow. Okay.
So that's the core wound of I don't matter. And then the dream tells you, well, first we go into a salon where I see some interesting things. You said everything's blue.
Yes.
Blue is the color of the throat chakra and communication.
Oh.
Only your blue is your word,
Wow.
honey, muted. So you're saying like everything's about communication, but it's muted.
I'm floored right now.
The thumb, the opposable thumb, is what makes us capable of doing things with efficiency and power. Like that opposable thumb makes humans humans. Your thumb is covered with a fake thumb, which would render you less capable than you actually are. So between the muted blue theme image of like, I don't have a strong voice, and I've been faking it a little bit about how effective I am or aren't with this fake thumb that's ready to come off. And lo and behold, the nail is painted pink, just like the others. This is like, I'm ready now to start using my thumb and hopefully increasing the viability and the intensity of the blue. So then we get, well, what's the cost and impact here? Well, it's 3,003. If you add 3 plus 0 plus 0 plus 3, you get 6. 6 is the number of marriage.
Mm-hmm. Oh, goodness.
6 is the number. Well, it's not just marriage, too. 6 is the number that represents that a whole and complete human being that's best represented by the number 3, the divine trinity. And when 2 3s come together to form 6, it's the symbolism of one whole and sovereign human being, interacting with another whole and sovereign human being. 2 3s in a 6.
Wow.
That's marriage, connection, friendship, interacting with others. So yeah, you gotta pay for upgrading your willingness to brighten your communication and move about more effectively by removing that fake thumb. So somehow the husband friend, the friendly conversation, remember, we've already established that if this is a friend you haven't met yet, it's the aspect of you and your husband of new, I'm ready to communicate at a higher, more authentic level. And he even comes up and it's like, hey, what's going on? It's like, well, what's going on in psyche is I'm learning how to become more authentic and courageous and vulnerable. And where am I going to go to find out where the breakdown started is the family room, the childhood room, which, by the way, I'm going to say this. I don't know that I mean this entirely. I'm just going to say it because it wants to pop out of my head. You've cleaned it up a little. Mm-hmm. You need to go back into the chaos of that place.
Okay.
Like if you were sitting in one of my classes right now, it was just like a shadow class, and be like, wow, Elizabeth, we have now found that there's some challenging, shadowy stuff that you need to examine. And this dream showed you what's the environment. And I'm going to say that the fact that it's all pristine and neat and not like it was, is like your mental lid on that chaos. I'm going to remember that part of my life as not chaotic, though I'm going to invite you to go back to that little part in your life and get into the muck, into the chaos to do the shadow work. I would also say this is what you are doing, Elizabeth. I'm not saying you're not and you got to go do this. I think you having this dream, remembering the dream, coming on the show, like it's all part of a moment where you are inviting a reflection of your psyche through my help as well. And this dream is just killing me with how clearly and specifically it's pointing to certain themes that you're working with.
Wow. This is, I'm floored. This is, everything you're saying is absolutely fitting in and making sense. Now the dream's making sense. Because I was trying to research it on my own, and what you're giving me.
Yay!
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Conscious Embodiment, Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. You can find us on Apple Music, the iHeartRadio app, and anywhere you find your favorite shows. Head on over to michaellennox.com for information on astrology readings, the Daily Astro Alert subscription, upcoming classes, and to join the mailing list.